Hi guys, and welcome to my vlog number 2. In this vlog I will be presenting two athletes performing a specific speed drill and two pro agility drills. I'm going to analyze what strategies and patterns the athletes are using and what potential skill or capacity issues they may have. I'm going to elaborate on how those strategies impact their performance and provide some recommendations on how to develop or transfer certain abilities to improve the performance. Just to explain shortly why I've selected these athletes, my first athlete Mark is a rugby player, and I thought it will be interesting to observe the applied mechanics of a team sports player, as most of the research about the sprint mechanics, acceleration, speed, and agility performance has been done with track athletes. Hence, the results may not be fully applicable due to a variety of constraints imposed, for example, different sprint start conditions. My second athlete, Ben, doesn't play a specific sport. He worked for the military for almost 5 years. At the moment, Ben keeps his athleticism with the regular strength training 4 to 5 days a week. Short sprints and change of direction are not something he'd had a chance to experience as much when compared to the first athlete. However, that allows me to access a good comparison between two athletes and analyze different skills and capacity issues. The previous footages were from Mark's rugby games, where I've tried to point out his position, but if you missed it, his number is 12. I just wanted to show an image of how a rugby game may look like and what situations is Mark likely to be in. I'd like to stress the starting point, which he usually accelerates from. We are not looking for a 3-point stance here compared to the track athletes. On the first video we could have seen more lateral movement, and on the rest of them it's a quick acceleration and change of direction. There is a lot of straight line sprinting occurring, but there is a very little chance the players would run 100 meters straight without any constraint. During the game there is a high degree of change of direction, and the players usually cover short sprint distances where they have to rapidly accelerate but stop very soon. Sometimes it could be only a few steps in one direction and the players have to reposition quickly to move in a different direction. In rugby, the players need to be ready for a tackle, and so they often modify the technical models of sprinting from the literature. On this video, Mark's performing 5 meters sprint speed drill starting in a static position specific to rugby. If we slow it down, we can see that Mark's achieving a perfect triple extension in his back limb. There's a good high knee forward drive which shows a good hip mobility, but the front ankle is in plantar flexion, which may limit his ability to develop high downforce. To reposition the limbs, we aim for the ankle to be in a neutral position or dorsiflexion, so the foot is ready to make ground contact. I've considered that Mark has a previous injury on his right ankle with torn ligaments. Because I've tested his ankle dorsiflexion, I know there is 3 cm difference between the range of motion in his right and left ankle. Hence, this could have some impact on the landing mechanics of his right foot. Mark's controlling the gravity forces well by generating a great vertical impulse, which stops him to fall forward. He seems to have a good lower body rate of force development, and he's demonstrating an optimal touchdown distance with his stance towed behind the center of mass. There is an active pushing and pulling with the arms, which helps him to balance rotation. Looking at the second athlete, Ben, he's demonstrating less of the high knee drive, and the touchdown distance seems to be suboptimal. He can get his knee into a relatively high position, which seems like there is no issue around the hip, but there is a quite poor forward lean. His stance toe lands just underneath his center of mass, which may limit him to access the force. It's very likely that in Ben's case this could be a skill issue because the technique allows for the right contraction timing. On the other hand, Ben seems to be managing a short ground contact time, which is beneficial in terms of repositioning the limbs. Too much time on the ground could be a waste, but then we can argue if the athlete is strong enough to get his foot off the ground, producing sufficient force. I think Ben is creating a curve in his thoracic spine which may limit his ability to transfer the force effectively. And so why is that? If we look at the leg extension, Ben is achieving a good triple extension in his back limb when getting off the ground. However, we can argue whether there is enough power and explosiveness, and because of this, Ben could have some capacity issue, which can be addressed with some explosive strength training and power development of lower body. Now let's have a look at some technical points of both athletes. The red dashed line represents the horizontal force produced by the athlete. Mark's spine remains neutral compared to Ben's, where we can see relatively big arch. Moving on, the back limb is recovering in the right position where the tibia is parallel to the floor, and heel recovers in neutral position. The athletes land repeatedly on a single leg and produce forces through the leg extension as quickly as possible. Heavier athletes need to generate the vertical and horizontal impulse at high rate, That's how we can test whether they are strong enough to maintain the long positions. The ability to produce high horizontal impulse allows the forward lean. That helps to relax the hamstrings and quadriceps before making another ground contact. Another key point I've highlighted is the position of the front foot. Ben is achieving a very neutral position where the foot is in a perfect position to make ground contact. Conversely, Mark's front foot is in a plantar flexion, and so his landing might be less efficient in terms of producing the downforce. On the other hand, it could also be just a wrong habit or a question of a tendon stiffness. On this video, Ben is demonstrating a wall drill which could encourage the high knee drive and repositioning of the limbs. This drill could be beneficial also for Mark, where he could start applying new motor patterns, such as more adequate ankle position in the leg swing phase. A great speed development drill demonstrated on the next video carries a lot of benefits. We can notice here that Ben in this video is not producing as big forward lean as he did on the 5-meter sprint video, which obviously makes sense as there is a resistance pulling him backwards, but this could be a very useful drill especially for him to help him develop high horizontal force with a neutral spine to improve the technical side of the sprint to maximize the force. Nevertheless, Mark as a rugby player has to face different constraints during a straight line sprinting, such as gravity forces but also the opponents. A situation of a tackle is very common in rugby, hence developing speed against resistance would be a useful drill. Now, moving on to the second part of this assignment, Ben's demonstrating a pro agility test. We can observe how the athlete is accelerating, decelerating, and what strategies he's using to change the direction. For testing purposes, the most relevant result is time. For the purpose of this assignment, I've used the test to observe how the athlete's moving in pre-planned drill and point out some key points. To break the bend strategy down, he is slowing down with the heel strike pattern, where the foot is in front of the center of the mass. Ben recognizes the pattern of the drill, but what also plays a role in the way he's going to move is the visual scanning. When stopping, Ben is leaning slightly backwards, which helps him to slow down. As soon as he's starting to slow down, he's rotating his hips and starts to create a turn. This is followed by a cross step, which seems to be optimal, keeping the feet low. Why is it optimal? Because when changing direction, the athletes aim to spend there as little time as possible. Looking at the foot placement after the crossover, Ben has opened the hips into the direction he's going to go. Next, we can observe that after the turnover, Ben stands up quickly, what indicates he's not developing enough horizontal force. Hence, we can argue whether his lower body is not strong enough to push off in order to develop the forces, or on the other hand, he may have sufficient strength base, but he may be lacking the ability to transfer it into specific sport skills, which means he's not able to express the forces. The t-test is determined to test the speed of the athletes. For the purpose of this assignment, I was observing how effectively the athlete is changing direction with forward sprinting, left and right side shuffling, and backpedaling. Similarly, Ben performed a box drill. Both of these agility drills can develop foot speed and footwork patterns. His torso remains more upright, which allows him to shuffle to the sides easily. There is more time spent on the ground compared to the 5-meter sprint, less knee drive, which means the athlete has less time to develop the force, and that's why high lower body rate of force development is crucial. Mark's performing a short shuffle sprint with 180-degree turn. It's a process of changing direction while running, and the athlete has to make a decision of how much he wants to stop and in which direction to position the center of mass in order to develop force. As Mark accelerates, he's developing way less horizontal force compared to the previous acceleration video. Perhaps it's because he knows he needs to change direction. He starts to lean backwards and slowing down while opening the hips into a new direction. The feet are kept low to the ground and he's punching the knee across the body to reaccelerate. Nevertheless, I consider the fact that during a game the athletes would perform agility movements as a response to a stimulus, which leads to change of direction and velocity. To summarize, Mark as a rugby player has demonstrated really good technique, and as I mentioned before, due to the demands of the sport, he modifies and adapts certain mechanics and technical key points to the sport skills. He seems to be able to develop high forces, and in order to succeed in a rugby game with plenty of constraint, a training in weight room to strengthen his upper and lower body is vital. Considering the fact that Ben has no previous experience with short distance running and not much of experience with agility drills, he demonstrated great capacity to develop the skills.